I never thought I would be the kind of a woman who was surprised by her own desires. I have always considered myself to be a decent mother and wife, someone who making the correct decisions despite the fact that becomes difficult. Life has a way of bringing you low and demonstrating how little you have a thorough understanding of yourself. This is the story of my husband, my betrayal, and my family and all of my convictions broken. A story about passion, love, and the exciting risk of hazy borders. Everything began with something I was never intended to see. My name is Claire, and I've spent the majority of my life as a trustworthy woman that everyone can rely on. I had a successful career, a beloved house, and a union that, while not perfect, robust, and long-lasting, Mark was my pillar of support. We had 2 years of marriage. Decades. Despite the fact that our early days into a comfortable habit, I never doubted his devotion or love. He was the one who recalled years, took my hand in the films, and always gave me a sense of security. That's what I thought, anyway. Next up was Jake, our son. He wasn't ours. We adopted him when he was 16. Following years of in the face of infertility, Jake recovered various foster homes during his life. He was silent when he got there, reticent and profoundly impacted by he had encountered anarchy. Mark and I wanted to give him the security and affection he desired. And for a while, it seemed as though we were doing it flawlessly. As Jake grew into a kind, self-assured young man. Additionally, I couldn't be more pleased with himself becoming. As the years went by, I began to feel that something is wrong. Jake was more. Rather than simply being affixed to us, he gave it his all. For myself, he followed me inside the house, looming like a shadow over everything I say. He would settle down on the couch next to me. I'd get this if our legs touched. A mysterious flutter in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. He was a boy who has never experienced a mother's affection. And he had never been closer to me. Have to do it. I felt like there was more underneath the surface. The way his eyes at me sometimes. It wasn't a look that look at your mama, son. His gaze blazed with hunger. A desire that I felt sick to my stomach from remorse and an sensation that cannot be named. Mark also noticed it, but remained silent. He gave me a sideways shot. Looks anytime Jake was in the vicinity. His clenched jaw, boiling frustration. Underneath the surface, he was obviously uneasy yet found it difficult to speak up without causing Jake any offense. Both of us pretended if nothing was wrong. Even though our household's anxiety increased every day. Everything changed that night. On a hot summer night, Mark was blazing, working through the night. Following supper, Jake went to his room as I worked on tidying up the kitchen. The residence was strangely silent. A thick hush that everything was pressed down. I concluded the dishes and went to see how Jake was doing. Prior to going to bed, the door was a little bit open. I could hear some light music from within, playing. I gently knocked. However, nobody responded. I pushed the door, expanded and looked inside, unsure if he was dozing off. What I saw took my breathtaking. Jake returned to his bed too. The door, unaware that I was there. His jeans were unfastened and the shirt was gone. I unintentionally caught a private moment. It was never intended for me to see. My inhalation. Married. A tornado of shock, shame and an unidentified emotion rushed through me. I ought to have gone for a walk away, closed the door, and pretended that I didn't see anything. I didn't. I got up, frozen, observing Jake's evolving motions. Desperate and urgent. Abruptly, as though he turned around when he sensed me there. Our eyes locked, and we stood for a heartbeat. Still. Jake's cheeks flushed as he jerked his hand away, rushing to. He buttoned his jeans. An overwhelming sense of remorse and I felt ashamed. However, there was also an electrifying rush that made my stomach turn. In tangles. Jake's voice said, "Claire." Shuddering. "I didn't realize you were here." I had run out of things to say. My thoughts were racing. Heart thumping violently. I ought to have expressed regret. Ought to have instructed him to relocate. Based on what transpired. I just stood there. My body was lying to me as I stared at him. In ways I couldn't acknowledge. In an instant. Considering that, I entered the room and I closed the door after myself. As I closed the door, I became aware that there was nowhere to go back. The atmosphere in Jake's room was lively. The air seemed electric and heavy, like though the walls were holding their breath. Jake sat on the bed, eyes wide, cheeks heated with astonishment and another thing that my stomach twisted. "Claire," he said. Whispered once more, his voice a mere breath. "Sorry, that wasn't intended. For your eyes." I refrained from answering. First. My heart was thumping and my mind racing. It was so loud that I was certain he could hear it. I ought to have simply turned around and left. I ought to have just expressed regret and advised him to move on. I didn't. I moved in closer, my gaze fixed on his. I said in a voice that it's all right. Shuddering. "You don't have to apologize." Jake's eyes grew wide, like a terrified child for a moment, experiencing yearning, unsure, and vulnerable assurance. But then his face, dark and hungry, transformed. He got up, reducing the gap between us. "Claire." His voice was low and unsure as he spoke. I can't stop thinking about you. Something is happening." His remarks sent shivers down my spine, creating a tornado of feelings. Shame, guilt, and an unknown sensation that lurks underneath. I discovered that this was incorrect. A line I ought to don't cross. His piercing stare and the intimacy of his body left me speechless. Agitated. "Jake," I muttered. "This isn't taking place. That is incorrect." He trembled. His eyes were full of despair and desire. "I know it's wrong, yet my emotions have gotten out of hand. You're the only person who actually gives a damn about me. Claire." The only person who's ever made me feel significant. His remarks cut via me, causing a surge of remorse and shame. I was aware that I needed to push him away to claim that this is impossible. I simply refused to. I wanted him as much as ferociously as he desired me. Prior to my knowledge, I extended my hand to touch his face. I traced the line of his jaw with my fingers. Jake gasped, and for a moment he froze, heartbeat. His eyes were fixed on mine. He slowly kissed me as he leaned in. But undoubtedly, the kiss wasn't innocent. Similar to what a son would provide his mother. It was hungry, pressing, and brimming with the pain and longing he'd suppressed for ages. And I kissed him, thank God. Back to you. For a moment, I lost everything in sight, my son, my union. Only conscious of the feeling of his mouth against mine. When he withdrew, we gulped for breath. Our cheeks turned red with a mixture of longing and humiliation. I desired to inform him that this won't occur again. But I couldn't get the words out of my throat. I ran over to my room and shut the door. Closed, securing it firmly. I was lying in bed all day. Evening, gazing up at the ceiling, attempting to convince myself that it was only an error, in a brief moment of vulnerability, I could shake off. But I was always aware of the reality within. That kiss set off a gloomy, dangerous spark inside of me that I refused to go away. I wanted to act like I was. Although that never occurred, I knew in my heart it was only the beginning. In the days that follow, confusion, guilt, and that first kiss whirled about like a tempest. I avoided. Jake dives headfirst at every opportunity. Into work and household tasks to keep occupied. No matter how busy I became, he was constantly on my thoughts. His mouth against mine played back and forth in my head, a vivid reminder of my previous behavior and my persistent cravings. Jake looked just as torn. He stayed out of reach, yet I could feel his eyes on me whenever we occupied the same room. There was a crackling tension. The air between us was heavy with an oppressive force. Mark most certainly got it. He had excellent vision. I was too afraid, and he remained mute, to bring it up. Everything happened that night blew up. Mark was away on business conference, abandoning me at home by myself with Jake. We danced around each other all day. One another, both avoiding the seeming conflict in the atmosphere. By nightfall, the stress reached a breaking point. I filled a glass of wine in the hopes that it might assist me relax. I sat on the couch and stared blankly. Gazed at the television when Jake suddenly the space. He was silent at first. He got up. There, staring at me with sharp blue eyes. Finally, he spoke in a quiet and not sure. He said, Claire, and the manner. I felt a chill as he said my name. Backbone. As I sipped my wine, I said, let's chat. Calming me down. What's it about? With his hands deep in his pockets. You know what? I was aware, but I wasn't prepared to face it. Jake, this is not a good idea, I said, raising my voice. Shuddering. What happened the other evening? That was a mistake. We will not allow it to occur once more. He gave a headshake, His expression was one of pain. It was purposeful. Certainly wasn't. I sensed. For ages in this manner. I wasn't sure, Claire, how to phrase it. I met his eyes. My heart is pounding. You're my child, Jake. This isn't right. Your son is not me, he yelled, his tone growing louder. I'm not family. You didn't mention me. We're not relatives. Not really. His remark struck a chord. Similar to a gut punch. I wanted to dispute and disprove him, but I felt in my heart that he was correct. I didn't own Jake. He was a teenager. We adopted a boy who developed into a random aspect of our existence, not by blood. However, that didn't alter the fact that our actions were improper. Please, Jake. My voice cracked as I encouraged. This is not taking place. That's not acceptable. He stepped forward, his eyes burning with intensity. It doesn't matter to me if it's correct or incorrect. Claire, you have my undying love. I think you adore me in return. I attempted to object, but the words simply refused to flow because he was, quite simply, correct. I adored him in the same way that a mother loves her kid.